so embarrassed. We were like running around the house like this headphone connects with this jack that will only plug into this console, and this will do this, and this will do this. And I was like, I just want a regular pair of headphones. So I have these huge headphones, but they work. They work, right?
I was just dealing with a similar thing. I just got a new iPad Air, which
Mm-hmm.
the connector has the USB-C connector, not the Lightning connector. So all of my cords are Lightning. So trying to get a microphone to plug into it it's like I don't have anything that works with this. So
Crazy. Yeah.
I can't charge it now.
Yeah. So, welcome to New World BrassCast. I'm Amy Shoemaker Bliss. We have Tony Granados, and we are joined by Patricio Cosentino. I'm really excited to have you on the podcast. I just told you before we started recording how I found you, and I think I'll share with the listeners too. We have this North American brass band podcast, and I thought we've done mostly people from the USA, and I was like, okay, so we occasionally have some Canadians join in, and then I thought we need to see if there's anything south of the border. We need to see if there's anything going on in Mexico brass band wise. And so I did some searching online, and I found a 4 Bars Rest article, and it mentioned some work that you were doing in South America. And I read the article and I thought that is just absolutely fascinating. So I thought we have to have you on the show. So here you are. So I'm so excited to have you now. Patricio, could you tell us a little bit about your background? It's really interesting and very international.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. I'm very glad to have the chance to be here at the podcast. Well, I'm have been born in Argentina and have been living there for 22 years and working in different orchestras. And I studied in Germany with Professor Walter Hilgers, who was a tuba player from different main orchestras in Europe, including Vienna Philharmonics and one of the leading brass ensembles in Europe, which is Sherman Brass. And after that, I won one of my professional positions in Buenos Aires at the National Symphony Orchestra, worked there for about 7 years, and then moved back to Europe, where I am teaching at the Brass Academy Alicante in Spain, South Spain. And since 2015, I moved to Germany, and I have been working for the last 6 years, between 2015 and July 2021, with a Brassman Association here in Germany. And that kind of was the beginning of my really big interest in this brassband world. And that was why because I'm coming from South America and I'm working regularly there, I thought that is a great way for people to come together and make music, and also help the brass world down there to develop. So I start kind of trying to develop a movement there, which is at the beginning of the for everything, and it is going to take a long way, but I think we have a lot of talent in South America, and I think it is going to be nice to see and follow how it's developing.
It's so interesting to hear all of your professional path up till now. So like I don't even know how to ask this question. How does one just develop? I mean, we know about J. Perry Watson in the US kind of pulling together the North American brass band movement in the 80s. But how is the brass band scene down there developing, and how does one do that? How does one develop a
Is there Is there actually a NABA type association or organization?
Not yet, and it is the whole movement is kind of a very, very, very first beginning. We what I am trying to do is to um, kind of set brass bands to start playing together and keep playing over the years. And I have started with a project in 2019 in Peru. I was invited from the School of Music Tempo to do a brass band workshop because they have had this brass band, you know. They have the brass band teachers are there, and they saw what I was doing here, and so they called me and say, listen, that would be interesting just to offer, a workshop about the work that you are doing. So I went there. We worked for a week, and we make an official concert, and that was kind of the start. Of course, with the pandemic now is kind of losing energy, but the idea is in the second half of this year to fly back and do a second brass band workshop so that we can put the people again together, and hopefully the pandemic is going to slow down and the brass band is going to get forward. That is kind of the idea in Peru. And then I was in Colombia too. Former student of mine is the tuba player of the Philharmonic, and he teaches at the National University. And a friend of us, who is his colleague at the university, is an euphonium player. He conducts the brass ensemble at the National University, and he told me, listen, that will be interesting for the students to see how it works. So again, I went there to Bogota, and we have had a week of workshops, and start trying to develop and to show them. Of course, this is at the very beginning, because they don't have the brass band instruments, they don't have cornets and tenor horns, and they have euphoniums, but they don't have baritones. Of course, there are trombones, which are the same in each world, and tubas, kind of a mix. They have B-flat tubas, but German style in Colombia, and they have F tubas. They don't have yet E-flat tubas. There was a project before the pandemic started from the National University in Bogota. They wanted to acquire all the brass band set, the whole set for the instrument. So again, the pandemic have done some damage, but we are working on it and trying to, keep the energy up and trying to develop the movement. And that is a kind of the work I am doing. That is why it is at the very beginning, and to think on an association like the NABA in the amount of brass bands what the United States have, and in a competition is kind of, I will say, early for now.
Yeah. Are there any pre-existing British style brass bands at all in South America?
From what I know, I have had in my youth kind of contact with a Salvation Army brass band in Buenos Aires, because we have there are, if I am not wrong, there are two, one in Buenos Aires and one in Rosario, which is kind of 400 kilometers north from the state of Buenos Aires. And then I must be very sincere, I don't really have listened of any others brass bands in South America. What I know, it is there are kind of brass ensembles in a very, very large brass ensembles in south of Brazil, in Curitiba was one, and also in São Leopoldo in south of Brazil. They play brass band music, but they don't have the instruments. They have the same formation, but they don't have the instruments. It's kind of a more economical problem. South America, it is really expensive to get the instruments there and stuff, but they are trying really to do something.
I think that's an economical issue everywhere. I'm starting up a youth brass band, and trying to find brass band instruments in a limited budget is like, it's awful. We have open section in NABA where you can go with maybe Tony, you can clarify, but you can go with like French horns and you can go with different instrumentation and stuff to just
Yeah.
make it possible for some of these bands to
Yeah,
compete.
we have two open sections. We have a youth open section and we have an adult band open section where you can basically put any combination. You can have larger numbers, so it's a very introductory. You can come and you can play anything just to be involved in the movement. If it, we also have a 10-piece section in our ensemble competition as well. So if you don't have a full complement of 30 players, you can put 10 together and just go to the competition as a way to get excited and get into it.
Actually two very great ideas. That if you don't mind, I will take them to try to use in South America. But I think that is great to start or to give the players the possibility to play with the instruments what they have and try to keep the motivation up.
Yeah, and another thing that's kind of interesting is that when the NABA bylaws were devised in the 80s, it specifically defined North America as United States and Canada.
Oh,
Yeah, so and I seem to remember when I was a student in the 70s and 80s that we understood North America to be United States and Canada. And
Interesting, because I was taught that it was North America was Canada, United States, Mexico, and some islands.
yeah,
And so
wow.
there's, when we go to NABA, it's all like people from where I've lived have been like, are we ever gonna get a Mexican band?
Well,
So
I mean
we
that's
need to define what North America is.
well that's I mean that's one of the discussions we're going to be doing. We're rewriting our bylaws and or updating them and standard operating procedures and kind of cleaning them up for the way that we operate in the modern times. The lines of communication are very different now than they were in the 80s. So so there's some bylaw things we got to clean up in that. And one of the things we're going to look into is to straighten that up and open up North America to all of North America. And we'll probably even have a discussion as to why it needs to end there. We can call ourselves North American Brass Band Association, but does that mean a South American band can't come to our championships if they, want to shovel out way too much money to do it?
yeah, that's right. I mean, that will be great. First, to have just the opportunity to go there, but also I got the opportunity to perform with the Fontaine City Brass Band in 2019, and talking with them, they told me that they was kind of trying to get the opportunity to get to the Europeans, but they kind of don't get a go from the European Association, which is sad. I mean, it just exists in Kerkrade, exists this World Championship.
Yeah.
But I think I was on the Europeans in 2019 competing with a youth band, and I think it will help the whole movement worldwide if you can try to let, I will say, North American top championships brass bands competing to the Europeans, because it's kind of, it is more exchange, more possibilities to listen other bands and stuff. So I was sad about the news, but hopefully in the future it's going to change, But that is why I think that your idea to get the chance, at least Mexico, or if you say whole South America to compete, I will be happy to let the brass bands know that this possibility exists, and maybe in the future we'll be able to have one in the competitions at the NABA.
Yeah, we're hoping to have this taken care of this summer, so maybe there's some news on that.
Even just to have even setting up something like a scholarship with NABA, so that some members of these brass bands can travel up and watch NABA and participate in the solo competition and just see, because I know that with new brass bands, they kind of start up and they're like, well, this is fun, and then they see a competition, and competitions mean community and bringing people together and pushing everything to a higher level. And once they go to a competition, they see what's possible, and then it just lights this fire, right?
Yeah, and
And
the NABA
so,
competition is definitely like that. It's a very, you know, collaborative. Like everybody loves to go and watch the other bands just as much as to perform, which is a little bit different than some of the other competitions in Europe where, they play and then that's all they do. But they have, 4, 5, 6 competitions a year. We have one.
Yeah.
So, so it's a big weekend and there's a lot of camaraderie and there's a lot of, cheering on the other bands and just really looking to see how good everybody is and enjoy how the highest level of music making they can make in the brass bands in America and Canada. So that would be cool. I think that's a great idea. See if we can even get 10 pieces to come up and start off small that way if that's what needs to happen to get people interested, and then they can go back and say, wow, this was awesome. I know that's how I built the youth band program here in the Triangle, is by taking them to NABA and they go and they hear about bands and they get really excited and then they recruit for them and make the band even bigger. So I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, if I recall what Amy already said about going to the competitions and get the extreme motivation to keep moving and going forward and growth. If I talk of my own experience, I was kind of a symphonic player. I have listened from brass bands in my way, but I wasn't exposed to the brass band movement since I came to Germany, and I became a big fan of the whole brass band movement, and that is why I'm trying to kind of work on South America. But I think what have helped me a lot on motivation was to be, for example, at the nationals in here in Germany, listen to all the brass bands and also listen to the gala concert where, for example, Brickhouse play, and it was kind of the first top brass band I have listened in my life. Live, I have CDs and stuff, but it's not the same. I have all after the 2019 Europeans, I developed the theory that it is impossible to record a brass band the same as you can listen it live, because the amount of sound, it is not possible to record a brass band and have the same experience that you have when you listen one live. So for me was a breakthrough. Listen to Brickhouse in 2016 at the Nationals here in Germany, and that kind of opened a lot of ideas and even in a professional level. For example, for my students, the recommendation to say, listen, try to find a brass band where you can play regularly, because you are going to develop sound skills, intonation, technique, which is, if you just study orchestral excerpts, you will have just the technique to play that. But if you play in a brass band, you are going to have the technique to play everything. And that is a kind of the thing that opened my mind in 2016.
I totally agree. I remember when I was a kid growing up in Ohio, I would there was my dad's a doctor, and he had a patient who knew that I played euphonium and would bring recordings of the Salvation Army and Besses of the Barn and stuff, and every time he came for an appointment, he would drop off recordings. um, and I remember I grew up with these recordings. And then I went over to the UK to study. And for the first few months, the first, I don't know, month or two, I wasn't in a brass band. I'm just trying to get my footing in another country. I need to just figure out how things work. Um, and then um, and then I remember my friend said Black Dyke needed a sub, and I was like, "This is my chance." So I made sure that I was exactly where I needed to be the person asked to sub in that rehearsal. And I showed up, and I remember they were going to play the hymn, and before they even played, when they took the breath into play, like all of my brain cells just like fired, like whoa. I felt like the air was being sucked out of the room before they even played. And then the first sound, it was just like, I'm going to be doing this from here on out. It was, to record a brass band just doesn't do it justice. And I find I'm turning it down, I'm turning it up because, it's so quiet, it's so loud that my speakers can't cope, you know.
Exactly. I mean, the Europeans in 2018 in Montreux, I was kind of listening to championship division, and I couldn't believe how loud they have played, because it's a championship. They need to show the extremes, but when they open and loud, that was kind of that is impossible to take from a microphone. It is whatever at expensive is the microphone, it's not possible. But yeah, the feeling sitting in one of these top brass bands is great. And I think again, as Tony said, the motivation you win getting to the competition and listen, it is very important also for the movement itself.
I think that this cross pollination, between different areas of the movement is so great. I remember my regular brass band when I was over there was Vessels of the Barn, and I remember I would ask them certain things, and they hadn't been exposed to some of the things that I had been exposed to. And at one point, I remember nobody in the brass band seemed to know anything about Gabrielli, and I was like, really? So they were nice enough that I was allowed to kind of take over sometimes. I could conduct some things, I could choose some music and stuff. They have a fantastic music library, and being one of probably the oldest brass band. Um, but I pulled in some Gabrielli stuff, and I'm like, we are pausing brass band rehearsal because you need to be exposed to Gabrielli music, and they had no clue what they were doing.
Did you play them recordings, or did you actually arrange some music for
I brought some music for them, and we rearranged the band room into
them? Yeah.
choirs, and they played Gabrielli because it was that kind of cross pollination. Like they hadn't heard of them and of Gabrielli, and they hadn't heard of that kind of style of Renaissance playing, and so I was like, okay, well, let's turn this into into music education time. And you know and now they knew that style, and every time we learn about all these different styles, I think that it's a benefit.
Yeah, it's interesting how the Gabrielli stuff over here tends to be more in the orchestral realm.
Yeah.
I think it probably became really big when the brass players from Cleveland, Chicago, and Philadelphia made that
Oh yeah.
recording,
Oh
which is
sure.
legendary. How they just went together, went in the studio and recorded it. No rehearsals. They didn't even tune. They just just cranked it out, and it's one of the greatest brass recordings you'll ever hear.
Yeah.
It's pretty incredible. And it's and I've actually played in some Gabrielli arrangements in brass band, um, but that's only because it was here and we know what the Gabrielli stuff is. It's interesting that they have no basis of it over there. That's
Right. It was
fascinating.
it was that group had no and so it wasn't related to brass band, but it was just kind of like, this is a style of brass playing, and we should be exposed to it. I had a question. I teach a lot online, and I had a question, that somebody wanted to learn how to play mariachi style trumpet, and no one has picked them up on that because nobody. I don't know how to teach it, but there are all these different styles, and the more we're exposed to it, because as professionals going out there, the more styles that we understand, the more we can do. Speaking of,
That's true.
yeah, go ahead.
No, that's true. And also, as Tony say, I grew up playing kind of brass, no brass band, so brass band and brass ensemble, and Gabrieli was there too. And I think at least in Argentina and in here in Germany, it's also kind of the repertoire what orchestral brass player will choose to play. Um, but that's also kind of talk about the richness of the repertoire of the brass band movement, because they have their own thing going on. It's like every year a lot of pieces, new pieces will compose for different competitions, or not for just for concerts and whatever, which is great. And I found kind of a bridge between two worlds, between the orchestra brass ensemble world and the brass band movement in England, and that was the Philip Jones Brass Ensemble, because many of the pieces what they have played over the years, which also have been playing around the world for brass players, orchestral brass players, have been playing for brass band. I mean, the Three Brass Cats, for example, to give one example, there are for brass band also Mr. Shams and Black Sam, and Borage. And there are a lot of repertoire what Philip Jones Brass Ensemble was playing, which was probably in a part written first for brass band originally, and they make an arrangement for brass ensemble, which is kind of a bridge in between the worlds.
And you've been involved in bringing a whole lot of new music into the world, haven't you?
I have been working since 2006 with different Latin American composers to develop repertoire from that part of the world for brass instruments, because when I was studying here in Germany, I wanted to play more South American or Latin American music, and I started looking for it, and I couldn't find nothing, zero pieces, and what's told me, oh, we need to do something here. So one day I sit down and just start with my country, with Argentina, and I put Argentinian composers in Google and jump a few web pages with emails, and I sit down and wrote about 300 emails to different composers in Argentina. So, but I got kind of 5-6 answers for 300, and so start. I start working with them, showing them what a tuba can do, because the instrument was for them very unknown, and was a very interesting process to try to explain to them that it's an instrument that can do everything, like a flute or a violin or whatever instrument you are composing. And at the beginning, most of them was afraid to be free to write things, because they was afraid it is going to be possible to play that. It was one composer who came, I met with him in Buenos Aires for the first time in 2006, and he came with the second movement of a suite he was written, and the movement into today stayed the same as he wrote at the first day. So he have had not any was not afraid to write, free for the tuba. His name is Jorge Tagliapietra, and I'm still in contact with him and working together. But since then, I have been, working with a lot of composers, and I got the chance with one of the brass band I was conducting here in Germany. I got the chance to make the premiere of a piece for brass band from an Argentinian composer. I commissioned that with him. His name is Ignacio Freijo, and I conduct a concert. The title of the concert was Sudamérica Vibra. That it was all South American music, and we make it in 2018, and we premiere the piece from Ignacio named Alpamanta. And the piece, Ignacio is an Argentinian composer who have a really close contact with our folk music. The piece has a lot of elements of the Argentinian folk music, and I will say, if you ask me, I would say it is probably, from the level of the piece, is a piece for a first division band. That's kind of the level of the piece. And I was...
Band piece.
That's a brass piece, original brass band piece, yeah. And I was trying to kind of, perform the piece more, because we played in 2018 and since then still there, and I couldn't get to other bands or other conductors, but I'm working on it, and hopefully it's going to be played more in the future.
Yeah, well, hopefully with this podcast, I'm not going to pretend like we have millions of people listening, but hopefully we'll get some word out there about some of these pieces, and hopefully we'll get some more people playing these pieces and more recognition of these composers, get their voices out there, get them heard a little bit more,
That would be
that's
very
part of
nice, and I think that that will be also motivate more composers from Latin America to work more on brass band repertoire, which is I think it's a kind of a big enrichment for the repertoire itself for the brass band movement worldwide. You know, if we have composers from all over the world working together and composing for the brass band movement, it's great. At least I think so.
Yeah, I agree.
yeah. I have a friend who has been doing kind of a lecture tour talking about Mexican music and getting rid of our stereotypical Mexican music, getting rid of the Mexican hat dance, and, and evolving into more authentic Mexican music. And so if we can get some more Mexican and South American composers into the brass band realm, that would be super cool. I'm just my brain is firing on all cylinders with this
No,
podcast.
sure, and we keep in touch. We should keep in touch after the podcast, and I will try to make the bridges with the different composers and try to reach more brass band. If I my feeling is like the United States is always in many kinds of way very open mind than the old continent like Europe, and that helps a lot for new things, and that I think that if we can kind of keep the connection and try to work together, it's going to help everyone.
Yeah, it's funny because you know the United States used to be considered the new world, and in terms of brass banding, Central and South America is the new world for brass banding now. It's the untapped market. And it's interesting that they actually do. You said they do have a couple of Salvation Army bands there, which is I think one of the big reasons that brass banding spread in the United States is through Salvation Army brass bands. But down in South America, that doesn't seem to have really picked up as much. And it's interesting that.
That's right. No,
Yeah,
that's right. I know, as I say, I know these two in Buenos Aires and Rosario in Argentina, but I haven't listened of other Salvation Army brass bands in the rest of Latin America, which doesn't mean that doesn't exist. Yeah, but the Salvation Army kind of do a very big social work, and music is kind of a little part of what they do. That is, they don't make a lot of publicity of that. That probably there are more, but we don't know.
Yeah. Well, it's still pretty fascinating. It's also interesting that with all the work you've done with the composer down there, that kind of makes you the Harvey Phillips of Argentina.
That's our big words. Yeah, but I think at the end of the day, it is important not only to move around like I do for work, but just I kind of, when I move around, I kind of try to bring my own thing where I'm going. If I conduct a brass band, as a guest conductor, I bring a South American program because I know the music more, and I think these rhythmical elements and these harmonies can enrich the band where I am working with, and if it is a new piece, the same. So I like, of course, all standard repertoire for brass band, from Paulo Bat Cooper to Peter Graham to I don't know Frederick Schillerup. There's a lot of great composers there, but I think this exchange of cultures is what it makes the exchange very interesting for me, at least, because I learn from them and they can learn from the music and probably a little from me. It's kind of this big exchange, and I love that from my shop.
So where can
awesome.
so these pieces that you've commissioned and worked with these composers, how can we get a hold of them?
There are published, the companies, the name of the company is Ediciones Pampa. I can write it down for you. Website should be working right now. If you have any problems, let me know. But yeah, there you will find a few of them. I mean, there are just Alpamante is just this Frasman piece I commissioned from him because I was working with Frasman more close in Germany, and now I'm freelancing. And if you don't have a Frasman where you can every week do things and concerts regularly, is kind of difficult to commission new pieces. But my goal is in the future kind of commission more pieces if I get the opportunity to work regularly with a brass band, and keep developing the repertoire from Latin American composers. So that is the goal. In Ediciones Pampa, you will find another pieces from for trumpet, into tuba, euphonium, horn, trombone, a lot of brass instruments. But as I say, Alpamante is today the only one we have in the catalog for brass band.
President of North American Brass Band Associations right there. So if you guys want to like combine and work on commissioning something, I'm just putting it out there, I'm just saying.
No, sure.
There's so many ideas and so many things that would be great for NAVA to do that we just don't have the manpower capacity to do as a volunteer organization. But starting our own publishing company would be fantastic. So we could have access for people to see it that are in the brass band realm, and to have pieces that are not from Peter Graham or Philip Sparks' website, or but something where it's a resource where we could get non-traditional brass band choices. We'll have to run that one up the flagpole and see if we can actually, because publishing is so easy nowadays. We that's something we have to listen. Oh, there's so many things that we could be doing. I wish we had more resources to do it. So hopefully we'll be working towards that. We're pretty energized right now, so it's awesome.
That's good. If you have now the motivation, you should go for it.
Awesome. Wow, that's Go ahead, Amy. I'm sorry.
No, I was gonna say after we're done recording today, I want my next project. I'm always thinking like 10 projects ahead, and I never have time to get through. So I have projects planned that would probably take the next like several years planned out already in my head. But the next project, the one that I can actually get done sometime soon, is I have the preliminary translation of my book, my kids' book, Amy's Brass Band. And so I'm gonna see if you can check it out and check over the translation and see if you agree with it. And then what I think would be cool is somehow setting up a system so that we can, during the pre-order phase of that, we can get some of the people can order it and send it to some people that you're working with in Peru, Colombia, Mexico that you were talking about. That would be super cool. But we could do that later.
You know what you should do, Amy?
That sounds great.
You know what your next project, 20 projects down the line, is you should actually start a real life Amy's Brass Band.
Start a real life Amy's Brass Band in what way?
It's like actually put people with instruments in their hands and call it Amy's Brass Band and play a concert as Amy's Brass Band.
Well, I'm starting a youth brass band. I can just call it Amy's
Brass Band.
We could do like a book reading and have the kids like play section by section, and it would be Amy's Brass Band. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Amy's Brass Band live.
That
actually would be kind of fun, having someone
that
like
reading. That's a really cool concept. Yeah,
reading the book, and then because it introduces the different sections of the brass band, so then have like a horn feature, and they play a little thing, and
So I understood you right. You are translating your book into Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
It is right. Oh, that's great.
Yeah. And part of it is we've been introducing Spanish to our kids since they were born. because I think the future is increasingly bilingual. And so my brother-in-law my brother-in-law is certified in medical Spanish, which means that he went to medical school in the US and in Costa Rica. So he knows all of the Spanish terms, the medical terms, and can just talk fluently in Spanish. Um, and along the way, it's launched his career because knowing another language is so marketable and so useful. Um, so I think we kind of talked about how we thought that if they were going to learn one other language, it was either going to be Spanish or Chinese, and Spanish is a heck of a lot less intimidating since both of us can kind of speak a little bit of it already. Chinese is a little scary to someone who hasn't really been exposed to it. But my husband minored in Spanish. My husband minored in and majored in just about everything. so um so we've been introducing Spanish to them, and the book came about because of my son, because when he was born, everyone got us all these musical gifts, and there wasn't euphonium in any of them. And it was all any of the musical books or something, or games, they were all orchestral everything. And the instruments were drawn inaccurately, and I was like, none of these are actually going to introduce my kid to what I do, like, at all. and the labels of the instruments were frequently wrong, and they had like tubes going who knows where on these things, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna write a book. And I just got frustrated, and I started doing some sketches in the car while my son was asleep. And Amy's Brass Band was born. So my son is learning Spanish, and the book will be translated into Spanish, and we'll get it out there pretty soon, actually.
That's great.
That's pretty
So,
cool.
Please let me know.
Yeah. So what's coming up in your schedule? What's happening? What are you up to lately?
Well, the funny thing is, I'm traveling tomorrow to North Germany to give a brass band workshop this weekend.
Oh, great.
There you
go. Last year, I was invited to the same community to make a regular brass workshop, no brass band workshop. And we do it, and they like it, and they say, listen, let's do it next year again. And I talk to them and say, listen, do you want to do exactly the same, or do you want to try something new? So, and they say, people don't know what means, playing in brass bands and the whole work you need to put there to prepare repertoire, and so they say yes. And we are starting tomorrow, and we are playing a concert on Sunday. So my next immediate project is a brass band workshop starting tomorrow in North Germany. The city of what is happening is Röbel. It's near a very nice lake, the Müritz. So our rehearsal room, when you open the doors, is directly you jump directly into the lake, which is a very, very nice location. So the brass players are very motivated, and they have been preparing the repertoire for several weeks now. So we are very looking forward to get together tomorrow and play.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's really cool.
So go ahead.
I was going to say, we usually do a question as we wrap up, a question of the podcast, and I just was thinking, so Aaron usually comes up with those, but I kind of came up with one on the fly because I thought it would be fairly interesting.
They always make me a little bit nervous because they're frequently a little bit silly.
this one's not that silly. It's actually a good opportunity to ask, because brass band world doesn't really know about a lot of people don't know about the German brass, and you studied with the tuba player from the German brass. And the German brass, in my opinion, is probably one of the greatest brass ensembles ever put together. We grew up over here with the Summit Brass Ensemble, which is similar to the German brass. But the German brass is just, they're unbelievable. Their recordings are spectacular. So my question would be, what's your favorite German brass album?
Oh, that's tough, but I will say Around the World eins, one, the first what they play, because they have a, I mean, the arrangement of that CD is, there are unbelievable. There is a enormous tuba solo from my teacher, which is in Dall'Italia con Amore, which he play like a E flat in the treble clef, very very high, and also you can listen a lot of power coming from the low brass in the different arrangements, and also it is one of my favorite pieces from German brass, which is this Argentinian piece. I need to remember the name. Wait, how is the name? Where they play really folks. They play really folk music from Argentina, because of course having Enrique Crespo, who was from Uruguay originally, putting the ensemble together in Germany. That was a kind of a huge influence on the ensemble. Pal Carnaval is the name of the piece. Pal Carnaval is one of the tracks. So I will say Around the World one is one of my favorite CDs from them.
Yeah, Amy, do you have a favorite one? Or does
No,
somebody
but I
have to
have
do
some
some
listening
research?
that I need to do.
Somebody have to do some research. Mine is probably Bach 300.
Oh,
Just a right that Toccata Fugue in D minor that they do in there is just spectacular. But the whole thing is, like the finesse of playing, especially from Hilgers, is just spectacular. What a beast of a player that guy is.
They can play Bach very well.
Yes.
Very well.
About as
That's
well
true.
as you'll ever hear a brass ensemble play Bach, that's for sure.
And it's funny because the Bach 300 was the CD which changed completely the ensemble, because the ensemble actually started in 1974 rehearsing as a brass quintet, and they play as a brass quintet for 10 years and record a CD, das Deutsche Blechbläserquintett. And when Enrique wanted to record Bach, he said, I need more players. With 5 players, I need more. So they invite 5 players from outside to make just the recording of Bach 300. And
Okay.
after the recording, they stay forever 10 players.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great story. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I have some listening to do, but I do have a funny story. I was in grad school. I was at Rutgers, and we were playing something by Bach in the wind ensemble, and the conductor was just like, stop, none of you are playing Bach right. And he was like, and he started going down the line, and then he stopped at me, and my last name was still Shoemaker, if that gives you a little and I played it, and he's like, you played it well. And I like German Lutheran heritage. Like I grew up listening to Bach.
That's good.
No,
if you listen, yeah, but if you listen to them, I think you are going to enjoy it, because I grew up listening to that ensemble. So there are great recordings, and for sure there are great arrangements that have helped German brass a lot to develop. So it is interesting you can kind of know. I always think, for me, on 3 very big brass ensembles on the period of the history of the world, and one is Canadian brass, of course, but it was one of the pioneers. Then Philip Jones brass ensemble, German brass, and I will say now Notziel brass, because it's kind of, now the ensemble who is making a lot of noise worldwide.
Yeah, for sure. The Summit Brass is still in existence. They meet at the Rafael Mendez Institute in Colorado each summer.
They still playing. That is very interesting.
Yeah,
I don't know
like
that.
1 week a year, one concert a year. I believe it's at Rafael Mendez. So, so unfortunately they don't play more. I remember hearing the Summit Brass at the Great American Brass Band Festival in the mid '90s sometime, and maybe late '90s. And it was one of the best brass ensemble concerts I've heard. Sam Palafian was playing with them. You know, they did West Side Story. I mean, they had so many good players. It was, I can't remember if it was Sam and Parentoni, which it might have been, or it was Sam and Picorni, but I think it was Parentoni and Sam Palafian was the tuba section for that. And
Not bad at all.
No, I believe it was so good. It was so good.
No, I believe that. Well, I just want to say thank you for having me on the podcast. It was great to share with fellows brass band lovers across the world a little bit of our passion. It is always very nice to see that, you know, people share this kind of passion. I will just say that I will wish for the future of the world that brass bands kind of win more professional win a more professional place, so that brass players can live from playing in brass bands and not still fighting for a few tuba spots in the euphonium spots in wind bands and orchestras. That will be great. Imagine that.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming on. This has been great talking with you today.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to meet you.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure to meet you too. And hopefully we will see each other in person sometimes. That will be nicer than Zoom, as always.
That would be great. That would be great.